Hello everyone, this is a bit of a rant about something that I imagine many people may have noticed, and this is going to be something specifically about non-gamers, if you want to say that. Although it's not one of those, typical noobs types of rants. It's generally about the attitudes that some of these people have about their own ability and their own inability to play games. Because I have said before that I do think that it is good in general for games to be able to cater to everyone. Now, this could be easily misunderstood. I'm not saying that I want more games like Candy Crush Saga, far from it. But what I'm actually saying is that I think that a game that is good is made better if it does accommodate and kind of market itself also towards those with less skills and less ability to play the game in general and with less knowledge of the game. What I am not saying is that the game should be easier or games should allow an easy mode. What I'm saying is that these games should facilitate a means to which these players can get better and eventually, if they work at it, complete the game or do the challenges that are presented in the game, provided that they stick to it. And I think a very common idea that people always hold true is that tutorials need to be good, and preferably tutorials don't need to be about like a text box saying you need to do this. It's about presenting them with a challenge that requires you to do a certain thing so that you are then knowledgeable that you can do that certain thing. Of course, in some cases it may be more difficult than in others, but that's the general idea behind it all. I generally do think that's a good thing, and I think it would be good for games to kind of allow an entry point to new players, and by doing so not necessarily making games easier, but just providing this entry point so that they can do something and get something out of it. Now, when I say that I don't think that these games should necessarily be easier, then what do I mean? Well, I do think that games should facilitate practice, as in they allow people to play and practice and get better at the game as they play, and I think that would make a very good experience for someone who is just starting out. But the thing that I'm really wanting to talk about, and something that I really want to mention, is about how a lot of people who aren't usually big into games, they don't spend a lot of time playing the games, or maybe they've never played a game at all, or maybe they have once or twice. This attitude of, I'm not good at games, I can't do it. And I think for one, other than it just being a defeatist attitude in general, I think it's extremely generalising to say, I'm not good at games. Because at the end of the day, games aren't this one thing that you're either good at or not. Because games cover a whole different spectrum of different genres that require all sorts of different types of skills. And to say I'm not good at games is to, as far as I can tell, is kind of to say I'm not really good at anything, even though it's not directly the same thing. But it feels quite similar. It feels like that they are saying, well, I'm just not good at games, I can't play them, therefore I won't. And I just find it really irritating, because there are so many things that people can't do and then eventually become able to do just through practice and just through trying. And I think one perfect example of this is like texting. I know it's not a great example in terms of the idea of getting good at practicing at texting, But it is a great idea in the sense of how people's skills and natural ability to do things improves just by doing it. Now when you see these people holding a game controller, usually I've noticed there's always the same pattern, like, I don't know what this is, I don't know what these buttons mean, and they hold the controller like with the fingers and they wrap the fingers around it like they should, but the fingers and the thumbs that would be used to press the buttons, they don't rest them on the buttons, they like stretch them out as far away from the buttons as they can, under some sort of fear that they're going to press a button and something's going to happen and they're not going to understand what happens. I think one thing that people need to realise, especially these people, is that usually that's what happens. You don't always know what buttons are going to do when you press them, and I think that they just need to relax a bit more. And I don't want this to, although I suppose it could kind of turn into like a bit of a self-help guide as to how to get into games. Don't worry about the buttons. Yeah, they'll hold their thumbs and fingers out really far, and then when they've learned that a button does something, they will smash that button as soon as they need to use it. And the perfect example I can think of, even though no one could relate to this, but my dad has done exactly this, and there have been cases where he has played the games and he has gotten better. I remember he was playing Final Fantasy 12 for a while, and at that point, even though he wasn't perfect by any means, he didn't know what he was doing, and even though it's probably not a good example because outside of the menu there's not much button pressing going on, and it's not really like timed or anything, but still it got to the point where he was a bit more relaxed, and even though he wasn't entirely sure about what was going on, he kind of developed some ideas. And my dad is not a gamer at all, far from it, so you know, he kind of adapted, and eventually I found out one day that he had gone and beaten a boss without me being there, and I was quite impressed because it's like he's gone from this total I don't know what to do, what the buttons mean type of attitude to this. So there's this whole like ability to learn, and what I was talking about the texting, which I should probably go back to because I kind of skipped over that. What I was trying to say with texting is that, and another example of this is typing as well on a keyboard. I have seen people text on a touch screen. Now I have a PS Vita, and I sometimes use it to use like the apps like YouTube, sometimes Facebook, or just the internet browser. Not always, depends. If I don't have like a laptop with me or anything with me, I've just got my Vita, I can do that, and I don't have a phone with internet. So I just use my PS Vita, and at first I was like, I don't like this whole touchpad screen, but now I'm kind of used to it. And I think an even bigger example of that would be the PSP, because there was a time when I did use the PSP to I actually used MSN through the PSP. Now this is going back a few years. This is before I had a laptop and when the internet on my main computer wasn't really working. I did use a PSP, and people have always said that typing with that thing is a nightmare, because it's like you've got the buttons where you've got, you know, where you have to press in a button like every so often, like press it twice to get a B, press it 3 times to get a C, and then like like a number pad with letters on them. Apart from you have to use the D-pad to navigate around, but I just got so used to it that it became second nature. And I have seen people who would be terrified of games and just not want to play games at all. I've seen them text on like an iPhone, and they're so much better at it than I am. They are. I mean, I see them and they're just like, it's like they're swinging their thumb around and the words just pop up on screen because they're so used to it that that's eventually what's become of them. They can, to the point, what I mean by that is that they can do that now without problems. So there's this, but So there's that when it comes to texting and stuff, and they do that without realising it. They just, adapt and get on with it. But there's this fear that a game controller is really complicated. In actual fact, this is something I find really strange, because I always think, and I've always thought this, that a game controller is so much less complicated than, say, a TV remote. If you look at an average TV remote, yeah, sure, they've got words on the buttons and stuff, but there's so many buttons, and you've got to do it all with like one hand. And just compared to a game controller where you've got two hands holding the controller, and you've got fewer buttons on each side, and fewer buttons overall. So really, there's not that much, controller-wise, there's not that much to like get used to. I suppose the only thing that really there is to get used to once you've got the hold of the controller is knowing where the buttons are, to get past the point where you have to look at the controller every time. It's like when we started typing, we used one finger and we looked at the keyboard and it's like, okay, where's the T? There it is. Now where's the S? There it is. So that, that can happen with games. And it even happens with people who've been playing games for a while, but they go on to use a different controller that they've never used before. Like when I first started using an Xbox 360 controller, and every time I saw a prompt that said the X button does this, in my mind I was thinking of the A button, because like position wise, because that's where I was used to X being, and also X being blue on the 360 controller, and on the PlayStation controllers the X is blue as well. I always got a bit confused, so I've got to think, like, when it says X, I've got to think of that means square in this. So I had to like convert it from PlayStation to Xbox controls. So yeah, I just wish that these people would stop being so defeatist and say that oh, I can't do it, and instead just understand that of course they're not going to get it straight away, because none of us do. When I started playing games, and granted I was about 4 years old, but when I started playing games I wasn't that good. I didn't know what I was doing. I remember first playing Terror with Thomas, and this is going way back, like 1992 or so, and it was the first game I ever played, and I was trying to complete the first level, and you have to jump into this hole at the end, and I spent like the good part of like 20 seconds at least standing underneath the hole and just jumping, trying to reach, and I just trying to get through the level without realising that, well, just a normal jump from underneath isn't high enough. I need to get up to a higher platform. It took me ages to figure that out, and I know I was only young, but still, I had to go through that phase of learning how things worked. When I started playing, say for example, Numblast, which is I think a very underrated game on the PS3 and PSP, I wasn't so sure what was going on. I kind of understood the rules, and then eventually I played a bit more and I managed to get like in the top 500 ranking wise. So basically, all in all, what I'm saying is that when you have these people who say that they can't play games and say that, oh, they're rubbish at games, just if you're one of these people, my message to you, and you're probably not listening to this if you are one of these people, but if you are one of those people and you're listening to this, I'm just going to say, don't worry, because we're all like that at some point, as with everything. No one starts good at everything, and no one starts good at anything really. And just because you're not good at one type of game, I mean, first-person shooters, I've tried playing Killzone and I'm terrible. And even in Halo, I literally run out and I feel like I'm shooting at someone for like a while, and then it's like one shot I'm dead, and that's what it feels like. And I know that I'm bad at those games because I don't have the practice. So I know that I'm not good at those games. And just because I've played games for a long time, and just because I'm very dedicated towards games, that doesn't mean I'm good at all games. Just like you are not bad at all games, because if you practice long enough you'll get better at them. And no matter what, you're not going to be great at all of them, and that's just something we have to accept. So yeah, I do think that people need to understand that. Because, you know, when you have been playing games for a long time, you expect them to be better at games in general, but it's not a universal thing. Just, although I will also say that if you are like new to games and you never played games before, and you want to start, don't go on like Xbox Live, because you know you're gonna have like the people who have been playing Call of Duty for like years and know everything, and then go shouting insults at you for being a noob. That's just certain people misbehaving and being rude. You know, you don't have to listen to those people. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I will see you all next time.